The wrench slipped from Jake Morrison's grease-stained hands as his 8-year-old daughter Emma tugged at his coveralls, her eyes wide with the kind of innocent hunger that breaks a father's heart into 1,000 pieces. "Daddy, when are we gonna eat dinner?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the single fluorescent bulb that cast harsh shadows across their cramped garage apartment. Jake knelt down, his knees protesting against the cold concrete, and brushed a strand of Emma's auburn hair behind her ear, the same color as her mother's had been, before cancer stole Sarah away 18 months ago, leaving him drowning in medical bills and a grief so deep it felt like breathing underwater. "Soon, sweetheart," he managed, his voice catching. "Daddy's just got to finish this job, and then we'll figure something out." But there was no job. The 1998 Honda Civic he'd been tinkering with belonged to him, and he was trying to coax life back into its dying engine with nothing but help and spare parts scavenged from the junkyard. The last of their food stamps had bought cereal and milk 3 days ago. His phone had been disconnected for non-payment, and the eviction notice tucked behind the coffee maker gave them exactly 12 more days before they'd be living in his truck. The sound of expensive heels clicking across asphalt interrupted his despair. Jake looked up to see a woman in her 30s approaching, her designer business suit somehow still pristine despite the late October drizzle. She clutched her phone to her ear, frustration evident in every gesture as she gestured toward a gleaming black BMW 540i parked at the curb with its hazard lights blinking. "No, no, no," she was saying into the phone. "I cannot miss this presentation, Richard. My entire promotion depends on it. Find me another car service. Find me anything." She snapped the phone shut and stood there for a moment, looking utterly defeated despite her polished exterior. Jake watched her shoulders sag as she stared at her disabled car. Something in her posture reminded him of himself, the weight of responsibility crushing down. The desperate need to keep moving forward when everything feels impossible. Without really thinking about it, he wiped his hands on his coveralls and approached. "Mom, car trouble?" She turned, and he could see the exhaustion behind her carefully applied makeup. "The engine just died. Right here in the middle of nowhere." She gestured helplessly at the rain-soaked streets that bordered the industrial district where Jake rented his garage space. "I've got the most important meeting of my career in 2 hours, and every tow truck in the city is apparently busy." Jake nodded toward her BMW. "Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with cars." She sized him up at this man in oil-stained coveralls with calloused hands and worry lines etched deep around his eyes. "Are you a mechanic?" "Something like that," Jake said quietly. He'd been many things: NASCAR Cup Series driver, Rookie of the Year winner, the kid from Kentucky who'd lived every racing fan's dream until one rainy night in Talladega when everything changed. But that was another lifetime, before Sarah got sick, before the medical bills consumed his racing earnings, before he sold his trophies one by one to pay for experimental treatments that didn't work. "The woman Diana Walsh," she introduced herself, extending a manicured hand. Led him to her car. Jake popped the hood and immediately spotted the problem: a loose battery cable, corroded and barely hanging on. 5-minute fix, if that. "I can have this running in no time," he told her. "But I'll need to clean this connection properly, and I don't have the right tools with me right now." Diana's face fell. "How long would it take to get the tools?" Jake glanced back at Emma, who was sitting on an overturned crate in the garage doorway, swinging her legs and humming softly to herself. His daughter hadn't complained once about being hungry, hadn't asked why their apartment was so cold, hadn't wondered aloud why other kids had packed lunches while she went without. She trusted him completely, and that trust felt heavier than any NASCAR trophy he'd ever hoisted. "Look," he said carefully, "I hate to ask, but my little girl and I, we're going through a rough patch right now. If you could maybe buy us dinner, just something simple. I'll work on your car all night if I have to. I'll get it running, I promise." Diana looked from Jake to Emma, then back to Jake. Something shifted in her expression, a recognition of desperation that transcended their different worlds. "What happened?" she asked gently. The words came out before Jake could stop them. "My wife died. Cancer." "The medical bills." He shrugged, a gesture that encompassed everything: the lost house, the sold possessions, the dreams that had crumbled like old newspaper. "We're just trying to get back on our feet." Diana was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked back to her car and returned with her purse. "There's a diner 2 blocks down. Take your daughter, get whatever you both want. I'll wait here." Jake stared at the crisp $50 bill in her hand. "Mom, I can't." "Yes, you can," she said firmly. "Take care of your little girl. The car can wait." An hour later, Jake and Emma returned to the garage, Emma chattering happily about the grilled cheese sandwich and chocolate milkshake that had transformed her from a tired, hungry child back into the bright spark she'd always been. Jake carried a takeout container for Diana, who had spent the time making phone calls and somehow looked even more stressed. "Eat first," Jake insisted, handing her the food. "Then I'll fix your car." As Diana ate, Jake worked. His hands moved with a precision that spoke of years spent understanding engines, not just fixing them but coaxing every ounce of performance from them. He cleaned the corroded battery terminal with the patience of someone who had once fine-tuned race cars where a fraction of a second meant the difference between victory and defeat. "You really know what you're doing," Diana observed, watching him work. Jake smiled. "I used to work on race cars, long time ago." "NASCAR?" He nodded, not looking up. "Cup Series. Won Rookie of the Year in 2019. Diana nearly choked on her sandwich. "Wait. Jake Morrison? You're Jake Morrison?" The shock in her voice made Emma look up from the picture book she'd been coloring. "You know my daddy?" Diana stared at Jake with new eyes. "I know exactly who your daddy is. My ex-husband was obsessed with NASCAR. Jake Morrison was his favorite driver. He used to say you were going to be the next big thing, that you had a gift for reading the track that couldn't be taught." Jake finished with the battery connection and straightened up. "That was a different person, different life." "What happened?" "You just disappeared from racing." Jake looked at Emma, who was listening with a serious expression children wear when they sense adult conversations contain important truths. "Sarah got sick. The treatments weren't covered by insurance. I had to choose between racing and taking care of my family." He shrugged. "Wasn't really a choice at all." Diana was quiet as Jake started the BMW. The engine turned over immediately, purring like the finely tuned machine it was. But instead of celebrating her restored mobility, Diana pulled out her phone. "Richard?" "Yes, I know I've been calling all evening. Listen carefully. I want you to Google Jake Morrison NASCAR right now." Pause. "Yes, that Jake Morrison. He's standing right in front of me." Another pause, longer this time. "No, Richard, I'm not calling about my car. I'm calling about our new head of automotive research and development." Jake looked up sharply. "Mom?" Diana held up one finger, continuing her call. "He just diagnosed and fixed my BMW in 20 minutes using nothing but intuition and improvised tools. This is the man who won Rookie of the Year and would have won championships if life hadn't gotten in the way." She looked directly at Jake. "I want him in the office Monday morning. Starting salary negotiable, but I'm thinking 6 figures. Full benefits, including the kind of health coverage that means his daughter never has to worry about medical bills again." Emma dropped her crayons. Jake felt the world tilt sideways. "I don't understand," he managed. Diana ended her call and smiled. Walsh Automotive Engineering. We develop high-performance systems for both consumer vehicles and motorsports applications. We've been looking for someone with your unique combination of theoretical knowledge and practical experience for 2 years. The fact that you're also a decent human being who puts his daughter first, that just makes you perfect for the job. Jake sank onto the overturned crate beside Emma, who immediately crawled into his lap. You don't even know me. I know enough, Diana said. I know you could have charged me $200 to fix my car and I would have paid it gladly. Instead, you asked for a meal for your daughter. I know you spent 18 months sacrificing everything you'd worked for to take care of the person you loved most. I know you're raising that beautiful little girl in a garage apartment and she still smiles like the world is full of magic because you've made sure her world is full of love. She pulled a business card from her purse and handed it to Jake. I know that true character reveals itself not when life is easy, but when it's impossibly hard. And Jake Morrison, your character is exactly what my company needs. Emma looked up at her father with eyes that suddenly seemed older than 8. Daddy, does this mean we can get our own house again? Jake hugged her tighter, and for the first time in 18 months, he felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel: hope. I think it might. Sweetheart, I think it just might. 6 months later, Jake stood in the garage of their new 3-bedroom house, working on a project car with Emma helping by handing him tools and asking endless questions about how engines worked. The Walsh Automotive logo on his work shirt was still new enough to make him smile every time he saw it in the mirror. Diana had kept her word about everything: the salary, the benefits, the respect for his expertise. But more than that, she'd given him something he thought he'd lost forever: the chance to be both the father Emma deserved and the man he'd once dreamed of becoming. The doorbell rang, and Emma raced to answer it. Daddy, it's Miss Diana. Jake wiped his hands and walked to the front door, where Diana stood holding a large wrapped package and grinning like she had a secret. What's the occasion? Jake asked. Open it, Emma demanded, bouncing with excitement. Inside the package was Jake's 2019 Rookie of the Year trophy, not a replica, but the actual trophy he'd sold 3 years ago to pay for Sarah's treatment. How did you? I've been tracking down your trophies for months, Diana said. This was the last one. I thought you should have them back. All of them. Jake held the trophy with trembling hands, remembering the young man who'd hoisted it above his head in Victory Lane, certain that success was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. He'd been wrong about the journey, but he'd been right about it being extraordinary. Thank you, he whispered, and meant it for so much more than the trophy. Thank you, Diana replied, for reminding me that the best investments aren't in portfolios or properties, they're in people who know what really matters. Emma tugged on Jake's sleeve. Daddy, can we put your trophy on the mantle next to Mommy's picture? Jake knelt down and hugged his daughter, this little girl who had been his anchor through the darkest storm and was now his compass toward whatever bright future lay ahead. Absolutely, sweetheart, he said. Right where it belongs.